guest. She's coming directly from the UK, and I'm talking about Aruj Haider, Chief Digital and Innovation Officer at the City of Westminster. Really grateful to have you here. Aruj is the Chief Digital and Innovation Officer at Westminster City Council. She manages the IT, customer experience, and digital teams, along with the emerging Smart Cities program within her portfolio, which, by the way, is incredibly exciting for the council and one that's moving at a very fast pace. Aruj's priorities include using technology and data to empower communities and fuel innovation, creating strategic partnerships, and focusing on digital talent and inclusion. Just so the audience knows, there will be no slides on this presentation. It will just be Aruj talking to us about her experience leading this digital transformation at the City of Westminster. Aruj, what a gift to have you with us. On behalf of our global audience, we're very grateful for your participation and sharing your wisdom and expertise with us.
Thank you, Jose. What a brilliant introduction. And I should say good morning, everybody. I must say that I'm absolutely humbled and delighted to have been invited. And in fact, I was so excited that this is my third attempt. And actually, I tried coming on the session 2 times before as well. First in the morning at my 11 a.m. So this is obviously GMT, and I got it wrong. The second time, I think Jose was giving a bit of an introduction to another speaker. And now finally, I think I'm here at the right time. So I'm hoping that, whilst I'm going to be sharing some of my insights, that through the questions and answers that I'm going to learn from you as well. So I'll start off with a little bit of background on myself. Jose, thank you so much for going through the detail. My name is Aruj Haider, and I've been in the role of Chief Digital and Innovation Officer role at Westminster City Council for just under a year now. And actually, my background is non-tech. So this is my first technology role. And my background is all around culture change. And that is something that is very close to my heart. So this is around, achieving that big change, those outcomes for our communities, our residents, transformation, program management, and change management. So when this opportunity was presented to me in Westminster City Council, at first I thought, I don't think this is me, because a typical local government, kind of a role around IT seemed to me like it was very process oriented. And one of the things that people don't know me, that don't know about me, who don't know me, of course, is that I'm quite rebellious and I like to challenge process. And so I thought, if it's all about process and all I have to do is, enact process, then this is not for me. But actually, this opportunity is much more than that. It is actually about that human-centered approach. So how can we look at the needs of our customers, our communities, understand the experiences, and therefore use technology to help achieve that instead of the other way around? And it meant that it was actually going to be quite a challenging role, quite a creative role, and having all the basics foundations, but also some of the exciting bits. So here I am, nearly a year down the line, and there's some incredible things that we are doing, and lots more to do still, because we are still anywhere close to where we want to be. So the topic that I've been given for today's session is thinking about that human-centered design approach, especially in the context of our workplace. So when we think about productivity from the angle of our staff, how can we use that human-centered design approach to create the workplaces that allow our staff to be the most productive? And for me, the lens that I'm adding to it is that by doing this and by having that human to human interaction, we actually deliver the right outcomes for our customers, our communities, our businesses, and visitors. So that is going to be the focus of my presentation. Before I delve into the whole thing around what our approach is around hybrid working, the future of work, and what is Westminster doing, I want to talk to you a little bit about Westminster City Council, or the City of Westminster. I know I can't see you over here, but I just want you to take a moment and think about the time, if you've ever played the game called Monopoly, which is a board game. I know I can't see a show of hands, but I'm sure that many of you are aware of Monopoly. So I grew up in Pakistan, if you can't tell from my accent already. And I always had a connection to Westminster by playing Monopoly. And actually, except for the first row on the Monopoly board, all other rows and all the stops in those rows are actually based in Westminster. And I thought, what an incredible place, where you've got Buckingham Palace, Trafalgar Square, Oxford Street, all of those places. But what was really fascinating after I, started working in Westminster is the diversity of the place and how, incredibly, inclusive it is. So to give you an example and bring it to life in terms of some of the challenges we face. So if you're a resident who's living in Hyde Park, which is one of the wealthiest parts of Westminster, and you took a short walk to Church Street, which is one of the most deprived parts of the council, you lose 10 years of your life in terms of life expectancy. And that just shows you how stark it is and how the diversity and the challenge we have of the different kinds of services we provide. Pre-pandemic, we had over 1 million people who lived, worked, and visited Westminster every day. Of course, we have faced a bit of a hit in terms of the visitor numbers post the pandemic, but it's still, if you think about, these stats and you dissect them a little bit, out of this population, only 250,000 are our residents. So the rest are our businesses and, visitors. So again, that shows you that the kinds of services we provide are not just for our local residents and communities, it's also for visitors, but it's also for businesses. We generate more in GVA than a number of other authorities combined together across the rest of the UK. So it puts Westminster in a very challenging space, but also very exciting place given its history, its legacy, and the place itself. So for me, that personal connection to Westminster and then having this role made it the perfect match, and it gave me the opportunity to make that real difference to all of these different communities. But I was very conscious, and especially with my background around culture, that we can't really affect any digital change. We can't really affect any transformation in the services we provide if we don't think about our staff. So Westminster actually has been on a bit of a journey, a culture change journey. We have what we call the Westminster Way. It has 3 pillars. Westminster way of working. It has everyone's a leader, everyone's talented, and everyone's valued. So we worked a lot on this culture change program with the big focus on inclusion and diversity pre-pandemic, and actually our engagement scores rose by 16% in just 2 years. But then of course the pandemic hit, and all of a sudden we weren't seeing each other in the offices every day. And it meant that it was a very different way of providing services to the most vulnerable, but also those who needed to act as frontline to be able to provide those services to the most vulnerable as well. So it was a very challenging time, and Westminster staff worked incredibly hard, whether it was somebody in social care or children and young people, or libraries, for example, from an inclusion perspective. Everybody worked extremely hard. One of the things that we know that people missed during this time was the connection to the city. Only less than 10% of our employees live in Westminster. The rest are living all across UK. So that connection to the city is something that we all really missed. I went to I'm not based in Westminster as well, so I went to my office after the lifting of the lockdown. And I actually took a cab. So we were driving around Oxford Street, and I just had goosebumps because as I was driving around, I felt that connection to the city. I looked at all those iconic places, but I also looked at what made Westminster Westminster, and things like Carnaby Street in the middle of London, all of those things. And then I sort of took a walk around Church Street and the markets over there, and that made me feel that connection back to the city. The other thing that I miss, and a lot of our staff told us, is that they miss those conversations with their colleagues, those water cooler moments. So in our approach to encourage people back to the workplaces, we didn't want to go with a binary rule. What we didn't want was to say, you must come in 1 day, 2 days, or 3 days, because that wasn't the Westminster way, and that wasn't what we felt that a leading organization could do in our case. So we did a lot of research around this whole workplace thing. And how do we use digital and hybrid to create the workplace of the future? And we looked at big tech, so Google, Apple. We looked at likes of Amazon. We looked at the big 4. But we also looked at other local government organizations. We also looked at central government as well. And what we found was that some organizations gave a very strong message to say staff must come in 3 days a week, Then they changed their messages. They said, okay, no, we'll make it softer. You decide. Others said, just go completely work from home, or remotely from a cafe or elsewhere. And others said, okay, 1 day a week. But what we felt we couldn't do was set a binary rule like that because of the nature of the different services we provide. So instead, what we are doing is to get that connection to the community, that connection to the city. We are focusing on a very human-centered approach, and we are looking at 4 key pillars, to our approach to, returning to work. And the first pillar is that, we are saying to our staff, welcome back to the city. So we are not saying welcome back to the office. We're saying welcome back to the city. And as a city, there are different parts of it that we are focusing the attention on. The first one being the place. I mentioned getting goosebumps as I walked past Oxford Street. We are saying, guys, come, welcome back to the city. So in smart cities, we are developing this augmented reality app, which will allow you to understand the history of, some of those important landmarks. We are doing something around a photographer's gallery. So as part of the augmented reality app, you'll see a camera and you'll see some important boards around that will tell you, did you know that this has happened? But also then, what is going to be the future? So just as an example of enticing our staff back to the city to experience that. The second thing we are focusing on as part of Welcome Back to the City is the connection with our communities, our customers, our residents, our businesses and visitors. I think our staff have done a stellar job in the last 18 months. But one of the things that we feel has been missed is that connection. And there is, human interaction face to face. And we've got lots of technology, which is brilliant, but that face to face human interaction has its merits. So getting people to come into these public forums where they can hear about the problems that our customers might be facing, or they can look at the opportunity firsthand, is something we're also using. The third element that we are using to highlight people's attention on is the connection with the colleagues, because we've all tried collaborating virtually, and I think it's brilliant to an extent, but when it comes to real problem solving, coming together face to face when we can also has its merits. So that team building, that social, is a third reason we are encouraging people to come back to. So that's the first area. The second area that we are making a really big in our communications is empowered people. And for us, that is very, very important around everyone's a leader pillar in Westminster way. And what we don't want to do is say to people that you must come in this day, that day. We want them to make informed choices. In doing though, in making those informed choices, one of the things that we have done and we want to be doing more of is that user-centered approach and that research. So what are the different personas? Council worker, office worker, frontline, even a counselor. So what are all of these different personas? What are their needs? And what we are trying to do is that marry that up with some of the trends that we are seeing and experiencing in terms of how people communicate, how people are changing offices, and we are bringing it together to give people those choices so that they can make the best choices for them. One of the things that people have told us during the pandemic, and actually this is true in my case, I've got 2 young kids, so a 6-year-old and an 18-month-old, and working in this flexible way personally really helps me because I can spend time with them. So just before this session, I was actually, I spent 20 minutes with my son who's off on summer holidays, and I played Uno with him. And I didn't let him in. I won all 3 times, which maybe I should let him in once as well. But this works for me. So I really want to make sure that I've got the flexibility of managing my personal life along with the work life. I want to be the best at work as well as at my home. So this allows me to make the most of it. But I'll know as an adult when I need to go in, and I do want to go in, and I am going in sort of 1 or 2 days naturally. So that adult to adult conversation without having to set a rule is actually really working. And as I'm speaking, I think my son is walking in, but I'm going to, so please forgive me on that. The third pillar that we are focusing on is innovative and exciting spaces. So we want to give people a reason to come back. And this is where the Smart Cities team has played, an exponential role in experimenting with different kinds of spaces. So some of the research that we have got and we've seen other organizations do is after the pandemic, people are thinking about using their workspaces in a very different way. So it's not so much a question of how much space they will need, but how they're going to be using it and repurposing it to more collaborative spaces. So as a council, we have just launched our innovation hub, and it's a small space because we wanted to just get on with and experiment with something. And it has got various zones like the tech zone, the collaboration zone, event space. And the idea is, and it's quite open, it doesn't have lots of closed rooms. It's got interactive screens. It's got a graffiti wall where you can sort of doodle a little bit. And the purpose of that is that nobody, and research proves that you don't want to leave your home offices or remote offices where you can check emails on your desk and then go to your actual office and do emails or Teams meetings. Nobody wants to do that. If they want to go to office, they'll want to go so that they can collaborate with their team members, or they could see some inspiring hear some inspiring talks, look at some different pieces of technology. So one of the things that we are trying to do in this innovation space is we are collaborating with the partners. So whether it's big tech, SMEs, local schools, we're getting them to come in, and show us some of the technology and around a topic. So assistive tech, is one, for example. Playable cities, another theme. The other day we had something around EV charging. So we are getting these thought leaders, different partners to come in and talk to us about that. And in doing so, we are inspiring thinking. So they can go away, do some, hackathons on whether that idea can help them solve problems in their services. And this is actually very collaborative. So creating more purpose around spaces like this entices people back. And that is our approach. One of the things that I'm really keen on doing is also seeing if we can provide free lunch Fridays. We're public sector, so money is always tight, but we are exploring that as well. The fourth thing that we are focusing on as part of this is, sorry about that. Sorry about that, the joys of working from home. So the last pillar then is well-being and inclusivity. One of the things that has come out in terms of the staff survey that we did, but also the research proves is inclusivity considerations need to be absolutely at the forefront of what we do in the future. And it might be that certain demographic groups, are actually worse off by continually working from home or remotely if leaders are not careful. So this is where leadership is absolutely crucial, and it is the role of leaders to make sure that they that they hear all the voices, even if they're not the loudest or even if they're not the most visible. So that well-being and inclusivity piece, whether well-being from a perspective of being out and about, so physically going to the office if in case you're lonely or isolated, or actually from that inclusivity perspective where nobody's left behind, is absolutely important. So bringing this all together is the narrative that we have used, we have formed, and what we are saying is that we're not perfect. We don't know the perfect answer. The truth is no organization knows the perfect answer, but we want it to be the Westminster way, and we want to work hard to make sure that we empower our staff through a human-centered design, which then leads to the right kinds of services being delivered to our communities. So this then brings me to the second part of my talk over here, which is that human-centered design approach. When we enable our staff to do that, how we are using that in the digital and smart space to transform what we do for our communities, our customers, and businesses. So as Jose mentioned, in my portfolio, I've got the IT team, smart cities, customer experience, teams, and it's sort of growing. In my portfolio, there are sort of 4 areas that are my focus. The first one is creating new value through smart and digital. And for me, the new value element is quite important. And it can be quite an abstract construct, but it can also be a very specific basic thing as well. And what I mean by that is, I don't want our teams to be leading on IT projects, because IT projects don't get anywhere. I want our teams to be leading on projects that transform the experiences for our communities using a human-centered approach. And I'll expand on that in a little bit as well. But for example, one of the projects that we are leading on at the moment, sorry, can you hear me? I've just got, sorry.
Yeah, you sound good, Aruj. Everything sounds good.
Okay, great. Sorry, I'm just getting some boxes on my screen, so apologies for that. I'll just move this on side. Great. Okay, so one of the projects that we're working on is what we call the digital portal, and therefore linked with that is the digital card. So I've been quite frustrated with, my own local council. I'm not going to tell you where I live, and that poor experience. Whereas if you look at the rest of the world, whether it's sort of Uber Eats or Domino's, the experience is so easy. So I know when I've ordered my pizza, I know I can track it all the way through, and I can also see when it is being delivered. Whereas that's not the experience that unfortunately people have when they are interacting with the council service. And what happens is that there are lots of different interactions, lots of different forms, and then people just get really upset, and it's horrible customer experience. I'm really sorry, Jose. My son is shouting. Can you just give me 1 second, please?
You sound good. We cannot hear him in the background. Let him have fun and go on.
Okay, great. So if you can't hear him, that's good. He's just shouting in the other room. It's like, the joys of working from home. So as part of my vision is that when somebody, and when people have tried to do this in the council, they've tried to approach it in a really big way. And what's happened is that because they've approached it in such a big way, it's been really difficult to complete it. And they've spent 500 years coming up with the perfect strategy, perfect plan, and nobody's delivered. So we've completely changed that approach. We want to start small and scale up afterwards, but we also want to do something that makes it a real tangible benefits for our residents and communities. So the approach that we are using for the digital card, and therefore the digital portal, is let's start small. Let's take one problem at a time. Let's take one customer interaction at a time. So we are starting off with, let's just say, somebody who's just moved in Westminster, and they've just moved in Westminster, and they need to pay for council tax, register for it. They need to apply for a parking permit, and they need to, if they've got kids, they might get childcare vouchers, and they might register for a doctor. Now, some of those interactions are done by the council, others by partners. But it's really frustrating because as a customer, you have to complete 500 different forms. And even though the council holds your data through the council tax register, we don't learn from it. So one of the things as the MVP that we are trying to focus on is, let's bring all of this online in one easy access and portal. So we are saying week 1 in Westminster, and then as part of that, you come in, you just fill in your information once. Ideally, we should have learned about you already through the council tax register and know about your eligibility. So whether you are eligible for social care benefits, or children's services, or some housing benefits as well. So we should be able to learn about you on that already. So that you get once, you don't have to fill multiple forms. And at the back of that, you get access to libraries, to leisure, you've got your parking permit, all kinds of licenses, done. And now let's move on to the next part of the interaction. So that is the approach that we are applying, and also taking it a step further to access to the digital card. So once we've learned from that, we don't need to separately ask you for different applications for leisure or libraries. What we can do is give you access digitally through your phones, because you've already done that. You don't need to do it again. Just go to a library, use your phone, and you swipe around, and you get access to the place. So that is just one example of new value. The second part of our portfolio is partnerships and innovation. So one of the things that local government is horrible at is taking risks in the United Kingdom. So that is something that we are trying to change. You take risks in a controlled way, in a way that in a safe and secure way. So I'm not talking about cybersecurity risk, because that's not right, but you try and experiment with things. So one of the things that I'm constantly pushing against is, this is in our current technology stack, computer says no. And I'm constantly challenging that. If you remember, I said at the beginning, I like to rebel, and that's one of the places where I do rebel. If we don't try something, and if we just try and present 500 reasons for not doing it, we'll never get anywhere. And this is not about technology, this is about the problems we are trying to solve. This is where bringing partners who want to work with us and taking some of those ideas in an inclusive way is helping us. The third pillar for us is digital inclusion and talent. My inspiration in all of this is actually the city of Barcelona, where 70% of their smart city projects come from the communities themselves. And I really want Westminster to be famous for that. So We don't want to create this big program that we think as officers is right and then delivers the benefits in our heads. Actually, we want to go out there, learn what's keeping our customers up at night, what are the problems, what are the opportunities, their pain points, their gain points, and use that to define what we do afterwards. Equally, a big part of that is on the inclusion piece. Not everybody will have access to digital in the way that I would, for example. So what is our role? And we are doing a big piece of work around the London Office of Technology and Innovation over there as well, in trying to understand that. Also understanding some of the drivers of those who may be more digitally excluded. Again, it's a very user-led approach. This is not about lots of interventions, lots of solutions. Actually, this is about understanding first. And that is very, very important. So one thing that we're doing as part of this is we've set up a couple of incubator sites. So the idea is we understand the drivers for that demographic. We then do targeted interventions in those 2 incubator sites, and we track that over time and see what impact it has made. And if it's good enough, we scale it up. And I think that is absolutely crucial to all we do. And then the next pillar is around talent. I really want to make Westminster, an attractive place for digital talent, and therefore, trying to help Westminster residents in the first place, to break those barriers to employment, understand tech more, but also, go, wider across this is extremely important. So again, in that spirit, one of the programs that we are just about to launch is Westminster Tech Lines program, which is around getting apprentices. And these apprenticeships range from digital marketing, data analyst, software engineering. And the idea is that, we are going to be, because these are the Westminster Tech Lines, we are working with a partner pride. And that partner pride, we've got companies like Unilever, Multiverse, Fujitsu. And the idea is that our apprentices have experience days in these organizations. They learn their ways of working and they bring them back, and we keep it fresh. Equally, we host their apprenticeships as well, and they learn about the council services that we provide as well. So and last but not least in all of this, I think the foundation pillar we must not forget about, and that is all around the data that we are calling our operating system. How it all comes together, how we aggregate it so that we can use it, we can make sense of it. A small example of that is the work that we are doing around schools, around air quality. So because one of our ambitions as a council overall is to be cleaner and greener. Just rolling out technology is easy, but what we want to do is behavior change. Again, linking back to that human-centered design approach. So what we have done is we've put some air quality sensors outside a number of schools. And the idea is that we are sharing that data with the schools so that the teachers share that data with the kids, and the kids can encourage naughty parents like me who still drive their kids to school to encourage them to walk and have, so that behavior change then becomes extremely important. Over time, we are extending the sensor network. So we are creating a citywide environmental sensors network, which will also include air pollution, noise, and traffic. All of these all come together. It's aggregated in a way that makes sense to different audiences, including the users, whether it's kids, whether it's parents, whether it's council offices, and all of that we are working on to make sure that from a portal perspective we are sort of keeping on top of it. But what we are not doing is going out there with a big bang approach and coming up with a perfect system, because that will be too complicated and we wouldn't solve any problems. So I think that is it from my presentation. I'm going to wrap it up now to say that Westminster for me is an incredible place. My background of being non-tech allows me to ask some really silly questions, but those silly questions are all around culture change, customer experience, right outcomes. And by making sure that our focus is on enabling our staff in a very human-centered way, in that human-to-human approach where it is about enabling and empowering them and making them excited about returning to the city, we are then able to deliver some very human-centered interventions, and products and services, and put Westminster on the map at some point, hopefully. So thank you for listening to me. Really appreciate all your time. And I'd like to open it up to questions and answers and hand over to Jose. Thank you.
That's fantastic, Aruj. Really appreciate all those insights. What unique perspectives you have from this role in the city of Westminster, and the engagement and inclusion of technology, strategy, and community all together. You know, it's interesting because we had never planned it this way. It sounds like, you know, we had this amazing day planned today where we started with what you absolutely love. We started talking about process-driven applications, which you highlighted. It's not really something that you love doing. You're creative. You like to actually change things. But we started actually on the process side of things and the discipline approach to process with a presentation from Silver Mist. And then we moved to the director of digital transformation for Electrolux, and his focus was actually on human capital, and the human capital and the culture that's built on maybe some of the process that was discussed before, but you have to go beyond that in a business. And now you come in and you take that to the next step, because while Haldin talked a little bit about the importance of community in this decision making for businesses, now you come in and the community is the centerpiece of your canvas. It's for your human-centered design that you are you know, developing here. So these are super interesting perspectives, and one of the themes that emerge as you're presenting has to do with your feel on what changes in you have worked in multiple organizations, and you have seen kind of the commercial business side, and now you're working more on the community side. To you, leading digital transformation on a city, what is most different? What is most impactful to you as you try to implement this principles in a community-based environment?
I think that's a really interesting, question, Jose. And if you look at the evolution of smart cities and smart cities 1.0, smart cities 2.0, and 3.0, or wherever we are, I've lost track of it. I think initially it was all very tech focused. And, you know, here's a piece of technology that will wonderfully solve all the problems. Then I think it went on and it evolved into a bit more hybrid. And I think where it overall is that community lens is so important. So for me, I think what has changed is certainly from a city perspective. I think cities are realizing that it is not just about bringing in technology because we think that's going to solve any problems. It's actually taking the time to understand that problem. You know, knowing what the opportunities are, knowing what are the pain points, gain points, before we think about any solution. And technology may or may not be the solution. So for me, I feel like everybody's sort of waking up to this, and that is a fundamental change. I say that, and I find it so interesting, yet so many decisions within, you know, different companies, no matter how modern they are, a lot of times are still technology first based, whereas people are consciously trying to make a decision now that, you know what, let's try and understand the problem. Let's try and look at that experience lens before we, you know, just do this form electronically. And I think that is a big shift, certainly in cities, that I'm seeing from a digital and smart perspective. The other thing that I would add to that is it's the evolution of digital teams and programs. So I think people started off with, completely, first of all, it was decentralized. So I guess each department was left to their own, and, you know, they were experimenting with different things. Then, you know, I saw a shift into very centralized teams, where this central team would do digital for everybody. And again, they would come up with these programs without really understanding, what the business needed. Again, that didn't work, and they made it too complicated, where, you know, they were trying to solve the world's problems in one digital program. So now the shift is actually about that culture change. And I always say that is digital for me is not a skill set, it's a mindset. So digital and innovation doesn't have to be the big, the bold, the radical. It is all about making stuff happen. So where we are now is that I've seen a shift in teams which are driving change, and that is very much the focus of my team as well, but also enabling change. You know, working with the business through digital business partners, having squads based in the business that are, achieving specific outcomes for that service from a digital and transformation lens, but based on the services that they take ownership. but also we know that we need to have a bit of a kick as well. So that is where I feel like, we've got to, at some point, I shouldn't have a job, I feel, because this should be part of our DNA. And, each of these different departments should be, leading it on themselves. But I feel like this is where we are in terms of the cities at the moment.
That's terrific, Aruj. I'll share a couple of comments from the audience here. William Fuller says he's coming from Oregon, and he says, "Thank you for expanding the scope of stakeholder definitions to have the community as it's at its center. Nicely done." Karen Zanetti goes one step further, and she says, "What a powerhouse of innovation and spirited energy! It all starts with people. I am moving to Westminster."
We'll have you come over.
Outstanding.
Thank you.
Listen, now in a bit more of a somber note, you are doing this you're on this journey of digital transformation, really
Jose, sorry, I think you've broken up on my screen. I don't know if that's true for everybody else as
beyond
well.
that. You're doing that, bang, cultural transformation, and you get hit by a global our way around the way that we do things. So can you tell us a little bit about what the impact has been on the community, and specifically then on your strategies and the work and how you prioritize what you're going to work on from a digital perspective?
Jose, I'm really sorry. I lost you there for initially at the beginning. So can you just repeat your question again, if with you?
Yeah, no, yes, absolutely. I noticed that your video kind of had a little interruption momentarily. So I hope you can hear me okay. And I'll rephrase that.
Yes,
We,
yes.
you are on this journey of digital transformation, which really becomes a journey of cultural transformation, and then engaged with the city and the community, and I has shifted some of the priorities and when it comes to digital transformation. So what has been the impact of this pandemic on the way that you do digital transformation and the way that you prioritize what you work on?
That's a really good question. I think one thing that this pandemic has showed us is, when obviously COVID hit and we went in lockdown, we had to quickly work on what are we going to do to provide, say, food, household items to those who are the most vulnerable. Because as a council, we deal with them, and digital solution was the most, obvious, answer. We delivered that in, I think, rocket time for a council, so something like 2 to 3 weeks. And the pandemic really showed us the importance of digital being such a core foundation for all of this, but also that we don't need all the red tape and bureaucracy to achieve the right outcome. So for me, that has actually really, kickstart our digital transformation in the council. Before that, we were talking about it in sort of abstract, ways we could do this, and random programs were too big. But actually, has shown that we can do this, and we can do it for the right reasons. So it has really, put a focus on it. And in Westminster, we talk about our mission being a city for all, and being a city for all has different pillars. So cleaner and greener, which I've mentioned, vibrant communities, and how we achieve all of these, and there's something about the economy as well, and how we achieve all of this is through smart. So we've recognized that, and we've put that right up front and center. So for us, more focus on it, more investment in this at the moment. So we are going through a period at the moment, but the way it has changed our priorities is that it's always customer first, it's always the problem first. So we're not doing any kinds of just tech-related projects. We're looking at that of which technology may or may not be a part of. It turns out that it is a part of in most cases, so we are going through at the moment. And so putting that human-centered design, that problem first, customer first, community first lens is enabling us to prioritize in the right way.
That's excellent. There was a little bit of a delay and the buffering happening with your video as you're speaking, but we were able to understand what you said and capture the message there, the key takeaways. tell us a little bit, if you're gonna get more technical just for a moment. When you look at the different digital technologies that exist, are there any specific technologies, be artificial intelligence or robotics process automation or natural language processing or whatever that is, that you and your team may have found the most useful in the implementation of this human-centered workplace and human-centered services? Are any technologies that have stood out for you as particularly useful to do that?
So I think for me, it's a combination of some of the basics and some of those basic principles, and interoperability being the biggest one. And then getting that right from a very sort of architecture level. And because we can have the most exciting piece of technology, but there's no point if the system that is being used doesn't speak to our legacy systems, or we can't make a difference in it. So that interoperability, open APIs, and being able to do that at super fast speed is absolutely crucial. And that is something we are trying to do more of through the digital card project as well, because we are going to onboard one service at a time, and our criteria and eligibility for that is how quickly and easily are the APIs available, what kind of systems are we talking about, how can we create that interoperability very easy. That is almost the basis for everything. So that is the one bit that we're focusing on, and that's how we are onboarding the services on that piece. Other pieces of technology, I think they're all good enough, but it all depends on the problems that they're trying to solve, because on their own you can think about all of them, they're very good. But for me, I think we are doing robotic process automation a lot of. So we've got a case in housing at the moment where there's a lot of manual entry of when a resident calls, there's a problem that then gets inputted somewhere in one system, then that gets inputted in another system through an Excel spreadsheet, and then it then goes through to the CRM by a sort of manual input as well. So this is where we are using robotic process automation. So once we get that information, how can we use that in the meantime to put that in the CRM so we get that one record as well. So that for me, I think is quite useful. Some of the other things that we are considering as part of it is looking at the data entry and making it more efficient. But what I've seen is, as soon as we talk about this, all the different services and officers go straight into, let's do big workshops on how can we make our processes more efficient. For me, fundamentally, that is a question of service design, not so much that one little element of data entry. So that's how we are approaching it right now from a service design lens. AI obviously is very helpful, is very good. We are trying to apply that in our contact center as well. So in my portfolio, I also happen to have the council's corporate contact center, and it's a very typical contact center the way we sort of approach it. And going forward, we want to use technology like AI, chatbots and all of those things to make it easy for us to provide a much better service, but also reduce reliance on those typical contact centers as well. So I guess all these different types of technologies have their merits. I can't sort of talk about one in particular. I think for me, the trick is in how do we use this technology to have that interaction with our customers. So whether it's in the form of an immersive pod with our students that we might want to experiment with, whether it's in the form of this augmented reality app, which we are deliberately not completing so we can get some of the young kids to code it with us, whether it's in the form of improving the processes. It's a manifestation of the technology that is more important to me. So I can't name one, but I think everything looks quite cool and exciting.
Aruj, what a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, your expertise for our global audience. We surely enjoyed that. We love your energy, your enthusiasm, your vision, and the discipline to execute on so many great improvements and innovations that are going to create value for citizens. And so it's wonderful to have the civic perspective as part of the conference, and we very much appreciate you and what you're doing. So thank you for that.
No, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this, and thank you to the audience for listening to me, and thank you to you, Jose, for doing a brilliant job. I'm really sorry for the interruptions by my son, but I sort of, managed to multitask and message my husband to take him away, so all sorted. But thank you so much, and please feel free to reach out on LinkedIn, anywhere else, to all the audiences as well, and I'm really happy to take any more questions afterwards. Take care of yourselves, everybody. Enjoy.
Thank you very much. Thank you for engaging all stakeholders, including your son and your family. So we're glad that you did that. So he
Thank
did
you.
just fine as a supporting, playing a supporting role. So thank you again, Aruj, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Aruj Haider here, Chief Digital and Innovation Officer with the City of Westminster. So we're grateful for her participation. We are going to conclude this session, take a break, and we're going to come back with the last session of our 3-day conference. And that will be led by the Senior Director of Operation Solutions for one of the largest manufacturers in the world, and that is Jabil, where Michał Wyszczowski will discuss with us how they are implementing technologies for great and leveraging those technologies with excellence, with innovation to create value, how they're taking a disciplined approach to business process management as they do that, and really building it all and connecting the dots on the discipline of innovation for us in a very large corporation across many countries, and getting this organization to move towards a common purpose and creating value for all stakeholders in the process. So you do not want to miss Michal's presentation. We're going to come back with the customer experience in the digital remote workplace, what has changed, and what are the strategies that great enduring organizations use to cope with it. So taking a break now. I'll see you back at the top of the hour.